geography, sociology, and others about Nigeria. They don't even know for them to cross-check, so they believe what is available. And again, commercialization. Because of commercialization, when you give one-sided information, those who may want to cross-check and also give their own side will not have the opportunity. So what do? They resort to the social media.
Let me look at it from this other angle. When I say, I would ask myself and say, where is the limit of what you think as a rational
With
thing?
the social media, you have no limit, and you can't keep them. That is one advantage of technology over dictatorship and over those who may want to over-control the minds of people. Technology has defeated that. And the earlier we agreed with that, the better for all of us, so that we could also be truthful and then provide people with... Look at what institutions like BBC and others are doing. They are also on the social platforms. And if you demean that, the thing is you go into obscurity and people will not believe you. So if we agree that information is fast and you have to do real investigative journalism and give balancing, like we say in journalism, whether commercialization or no commercialization, people must hear their own sides. And then issue of legitimacy, issue of mobilization, all of these things must be addressed. If you ignore that, then the social media will continue to challenge the conventional media and continue to gather more people, more supporters, because it's easier, it's faster, and it's handy.
Let me take it to Dr. Adaba. You were once a regulator. And what do you see now, especially with the social media that goes largely unregulated?
I'm very uncomfortable with that. And unfortunately, I don't have a solution to that. I don't know whether they can ever be regulated, except maybe the Russian methods, or Chinese, completely clamping down on whatever the provider is. But I think our best approach is a continuous conscientization. Getting these people, it's difficult because every day they spring up. As Prof has said, Alaji has said, the number of graduates churned out from the universities every year do not have places to work. And sometimes they resort to these. I have no quarrels with that. But please, if you resort to it, you have been taught to give correct news, to give honest, unbiased news. Apply it. The hot nature of your medium is still very effective. It is not to say you should glamorize it or make ostentation out of whatever the news item is in order to sell. You will still sell. But having said that, from the look of things, very many times we express our own personal, individual views based on our backgrounds. Or we express these views based on who plays the piper that will dictate the tune. Based on even the society itself, what you see as their own views of the situation, even though sometimes they may be wrong. So there are quite a number of areas that one looks at. And with this variety of ideas coming from different social media, if you are strong enough to be able to go through all of them, at least you'll be able to decipher, you'll be able to filter and make a choice of whatever you identify as a true news item. But for now, I think we have too many issues with the regular media, the traditional media, that looking at the regulatory element of the social media might be a bit difficult. But what matters most is appealing to them. How we can do that, I'm not too sure I quite know, but appealing to them to work on the ethics of the profession. If we're able to get that done, either using the regular media or organizing orientation courses and the rest of them, the government knows that what they are doing is not helping them. They should therefore not necessarily bribe them, but at least give them a new orientation on what these things should be. Because many just jump from their windows and then, you know, whatever they see, they shoot and put some comments on it, and that becomes news.
Now, Martin's made mention of technology, and I think Professor Patti also, power of technology, the same technology that has made it possible to get news and things on, you know, real time. It is the same technology that has made it so easy to distort.
Yes, Cyril. Cyril, perhaps I may just add on to your bewilderment. The thing is, technology is evolving. Remember 40 years ago, 50 years ago, we were using black and white television, even the evolution of radio. And today, everything has gone into convergence. On your handset, you can access almost everything, this simple platform. So what I'm trying to say here is, we cannot in Nigeria bring down the global standard to our own standards, insisting that things must remain as they are. No, it won't happen. Look, the past has passed. Technology has arrived. It is either we imbibe the new technology, we adjust our ways and go with modern trends, or we remain where we are, where we have always been, and the world will go and leave us. And our people will continue to do all these things, and we continue complaining.
Okay, speaking of that, back in Lagos, speaking of that, Martin, in the past you could say pictures don't lie. You can't say that now, can you?
No, with technology now, people can impose photographs, and you still have to check. You know, sometimes, even to us in the print media, you see that they post some photographs to us from some areas of conflict, from some flashpoints like Congo and others like that, as if they happened in Adamawa or Northeast Zone. Yes, now photographs can be made to lie. So you just need to do some due diligence to be able to use same technology, software, to check the sources of such material. Because, you know, as Professor Patti was talking, I think it's because he's a teacher, I like his perspective. Media, even in global context, in the developed world, in the developed economy, even though it's a book I have here, we display it, they now say that the media has become a weapon of mass distortion. An expert has written a book on it from the West, a weapon of mass distortion, meaning distortion of facts. But you know what we need to do is not to read from the book of Lamentation, is to face facts, is to face reality of the fact that social media, citizen journalism, as they call it now, is an idea whose time has come. And institutions of training, like the one that Professor Patel is talking from now, should be equipped, like they did in Colombia, one of the best journalism schools in the world. As soon as social media reared its head like that, they improved. They just restructured their curriculum. And they now say computer science plus journalism is equal to digital journalism. So you see now there is a convergence. You have to face technology, and New York Times has done that. New York Times in 2012 left United States while they were looking for a chief executive that could manage a modern newspaper. They went to the United Kingdom where they couldn't find one in the United States. They found the DG, a retiring DG of BBC, British Broadcasting Service, a broadcaster. The name Mark Thompson, you can find this online. New York Times recruited Mark Thompson, who is very good at using digital technologies for digital journalism to get a lot of subscribers, to make money from digital edition of New York Times. Because they lost $88 million in the third quarter of 2012, and they had to look for a chief executive who could use digital journalism to make money for them. They had good journalism, they had good journalists, they had all sorts of things, but they couldn't get it right because of the incursion of the social media. So today, they had a broadcaster as the chief executive of a newspaper, Mark Thompson. Check his name online, New York Times. So I think we need to follow what is going on. We need to invest in technology. We need to invest in institutions like the NTA to be a world standard, to be a world-class station, to invest in technology. So instead of complaining about people who are doing this, as an elder like Chief Segun Oshoba has said, we too need to retrain ourselves to be able to function in a modern society. The social media, what prevents other organizations from doing their digital edition? I understand that if you have your money, you can get software that can enable you to compete. This is a world of competition, a world of innovation, and it is only through research that we can do. Why can't our universities, our schools of journalism now, communication, also be equipped to be able to train all this one that my brother Gaia was talking that we are training so many. How useful are these new graduates of journalism? What kind of equipment can these our graduates handle? They can't write well. They can't do so much well because the foundation has been very, very poor. Thank you. We'll continue from there.
Oh, yeah.
Training.
Yes, training.
Well, I have good news for Martins and the rest of Nigeria on aspects of training in mass communication institutions. Let me start with what we are doing in Bayero before I tell you what will be happening in September. And in Bayero recently, we secured a grant of about $700,000. And what we are going to do is to equip our faculty of communications with brand new facilities to train our students on digital journalism. And specifically, we have started a Department of Information and Media Studies. That is for our own over there. But in September, the whole of Nigeria, UNESCO, and the NUC will be congregating at Bayero University, Kano, to review the national mass communication curriculum, where we are training students at the undergraduate and at the postgraduate level. We are going to revolutionize the training pattern. We are not going to continue using what was done in 1980 or what I was used to be trained at the degree level. Now, we are changing everything completely. And in the next 2-3 years, all our departments will be revolutionized and digital communication or media or journalism will be taught. And our only hope is that government will also be very, very serious with the digitalization of its media organization, because there will be no point for us to go and train digitally minded fellows only for them to end up in analog stations. When you have a digital fellow with analog station, that will be dangerous. If you have a digital station and then analog workers like what we have today in some places, it is also dangerous. So we have to go with contemporary situations. And not only that, Cyril, we are also looking at another dimension of issue of multiculturalism and ethics. Let me give you a very simple example of what is happening in Nigeria, where people are complaining about fake news. Today, it's possible for me, as a citizen, as somebody from Adamawa State who is working in Bayero University, Kano, to marry a lady on that campus, have a child. The child will go to Bayero nursery school, Bayero primary school, Bayero secondary school, Bayero university, and then we go and manipulate the NYC posting probably to Kano. And at the end of the day, this boy or girl will end up writing for Nigeria in Nigerian newspapers. What kind of worldview are you likely to expect? Today, many of us no longer go on transfers. We don't travel. We just stay in our villages and start distributing hatred and ignorance about ourselves, and then expect that standards in other communities must be like our own standards. We have all become so provincial. You hear ministers, you hear senators, you hear senior elders. When they open their mouths, what you hear is just localism. They don't even know Nigeria. We don't even know Nigeria because we don't travel, and because of Boko Haram, because of fear of kidnapping, because of bad roads, because of so many other problems. People don't travel. You just stay in your village, take your telephone, start distributing hatred, start distributing lies on things that you don't even know. So at the end of the day, each one of us is now fed up with so many lies. And stations like NTA should be producing serious educational documentaries. Because of commercialization, they no longer engage in producing very serious documentaries that can teach people. You overfed us with entertainment.
But they still do.
Yes,
But
but
one
how
of the
many?
things, for
Not
instance,
only NTA, what I mean generally the media.
For instance, the media now, most of them are shifting away from what you've just talked about. But anyhow, the phone lines are open already, and we have Abubakar calling in from Ilorin. Okay, we lost that call from Ilorin, but just keep the calls coming through. We'll try and take as many as we can as we go on.
We just did a study, Cyril, for the National Broadcasting Commission on hate speeches in the last 2015 elections. I pray you get the report to read on what our media, broadcast media organizations did and how much they have distributed hatred. We are talking of hate speech, dangerous speech, and offensive speeches from politicians, very senior politicians.
Now, what is the responsibility, if we say to a large extent that the new media, the social media, cannot be regulated, what is the responsibility of the conventional media? What is the responsibility towards nation building in terms of where you have, like he said, senior politicians and senior citizens spreading what is likely to destabilize society? Where is the responsibility of these organs of communication? Where does it come in then?
That's the essence of regulatory bodies. In some of the organizations, with television, for example, I don't think we should, well, there are problems. There definitely are. With the newspaper, they self-regulate.
Yeah.
They self-regulate. You know, they're not looking for any government, whatever it is, to regulate them, to tell them what to do, because they believe they have been on with it, you know, for how many hundreds of years, you know, and they have been getting on very well. But with the electronic media, yes, the National Broadcasting Commission came up in 1992. Even then, there are many instances where people flout these clearly stated rules and regulations for operation. And in certain cases, there are people who know nothing about the media, but are just interested in promoting whatever it is that is theirs in their own interest. And they would say anything. And no matter how much you find them, they are ready to pay. In some others, involving state governments, for example, you discover that because the stations have so deified the governor, he now tends to think that the station belongs to him. And as a result, whatever he sends in there, it is law. And very many times, these are erroneous. Those are sometimes the difficult cases. And come into an election period, take at federal level. You saw what it was during the last elections. Professor Pate will bear me out. I don't know, maybe you know, I had to write a very strong memo to ask the bodies, the regulatory bodies, what on earth are you doing? Why do we have to go through all these? When it has come to a stage, the two people who were contesting the election at that material time are not just elders. They are elder statesmen. And our culture tells us to respect elders. And more especially, when it now comes to leading the country, the two of them have, don't we have a responsibility to give them that respect? What we saw on some of the national media are an appalling, in fact, the most distasteful presentation of, but these were on for a while until probably when that letter came out, and then there was now piping down. Okay. Did we have to do that? The stations themselves should know what is right and what is wrong, what is of good taste and what is not.
All right, let's try to go back to the phones. We have from Benue, Johnson calling in from Benue State. Hello, Johnson. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it's all right. I just want to appreciate you for this very, very topic. In fact, what happened to me, what happened just in June this year, just somebody just wrote to me and said, look at the phone, that the Facebook, that somebody, that the death of somebody has been confirmed. When I look at it, I read it in his handset, I was surprised. I said, look, did you hear anything from the NTA? He said, no. Did you hear it from NTA or National Network News? He said, no. I said, no, I don't trust it. It's only when I hear it from the NTA that I will believe. So, but most of it are Facebook and social media are not going to write him about. I don't trust them. I only trust NTA where his program is there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnson from Benue. And let's return to Martin. Martin's in our Lagos center. Martin's, well, yes, we talked about training. And even as the conventional media begins to train its own to get to that level too and be out there, so it's a world of competition. How can we begin to recapture that sense of decency that the people must have? Now, people take joy in reporting fake deaths. I mean, this is not even restricted to this country alone. Many a times you'd pick up on the social media, you'd see that some prominent individual has passed on. And it is alleged that sometimes when bloggers do this, it's because they want their sites to have so many hits, the more money. So have we lost our sense of values?
We haven't lost our sense of value. It's just, you see, these forces of globalization. You'll recall that they are even saying that this election in Kenya, where you have very vibrant media, in Kenya, that is social media election. That's the tag. That's a social media election. They've introduced even fake news, and then fake news items have lifted some of the candidates. You see, it's a global problem. We haven't lost our sense of values, but all we need to do, instead of lamenting, is to invest in people that are there, whether in the traditional media. You know, market forces to deal with fake news carriers. If you do not allow public interest to dictate what you do, and you're a publisher or you're a proprietor, you know that people will begin to navigate away from your own medium. It's a customer-oriented business. If people listen to you and they discover that you are not a credible medium,
balance with what the people want or what is credible. Because, let me give you an example, Martins. I'll give you an example. You on the print, you work in print, I work in electronic media. I have found after so many years of doing interviews that people expect you to bring someone into the studio for an interview. The only time so many people will think you have done a good job is when you embarrass your guests and say things against them and, generally, attack them on air. A lot of people think that's what it's all about. So if you don't do that, they say, you have not done it. You have not insulted him. So must you pander to that and leave aside your professional ethics?
You can't pander to that. If you want credibility, if you want the brand equity of your own organ to just be enhanced, you can't do that. You still have to continue to do what you have been doing well that people believe. You know that despite the noise level in the social media, you discover that there are still so many credible people, elders, who know the news, who know quality. And if you don't continue to give people quality, if you pander to the interest of fake news and others like that, you lose the medium. As I think it was Professor Patel that said so, that we can lose the news, you can lose business, you can lose credibility. Once you lose credibility, you are finished. That is why so many organs already have problems, because they have lost touch with the people. and it's a customer-oriented business. If the people, if you continue to do things to a particular section of the society that cannot sustain you, you are finished. So we should continue to enhance the values that make us respectable journalists. We should continue to uphold such values. We shouldn't lose our sense of responsibility, social responsibility. We should not continue to pander to the interests of people who want to destroy the society, even global forces that will want to destroy Nigeria. We should be able to discern what they are doing. That is why what somebody was talking about history, about knowing facts, about knowing Nigeria, about multiculturalism. You should know what Nigeria is all about, because Nigeria is not some of these small countries. Nigeria is the most populous black nation on earth, with so many ethnic nationalities, and people who are covering the system should know all this. People should know. When people, you see the way some of our people write stories now, it's incredible. They do not do contextual reporting by giving a background to what they are doing for people to understand. That way, we lose respect. I think we should return to it. I agree with you that we should continue to uphold ethics, we should values, and we should not distort the news to satisfy certain interests.
We go back to the phones. We have Daniel, who's calling in from Lagos. I hope Daniel is still on the line. Hello, Daniel. Yes, Daniel, good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for your program. You see, in Nigeria, our orientation is for us, is blessed. I don't know why. There are no longer competing with other African nations. Normally, we were known as that, the Africa, so on. There's no difficult situation of especially the use of our social media. It's a question. But some of the things that most development goes that there was the headline I saw one year, and I tried the editor of that newspaper and Abuja or Kada rider, Janico trader, Abuja. I wonder at this point of the newspaper, what is that kind of headline? What is that? What kind of headline? Carrying the point to where there is half. So please, what I want the NTA to do, because it's one of my favorite television, I want them to keep orientation of the life. Many people to be saved from all this manner of business, all this manner of what to say, the same of things. I don't think so. Our national orientation also to improve their activities. Because the youth are taking not away from nothing, and it's very dangerous. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll come to that in a moment. But an aspect which Martins raised in his earlier comments, his first comment, was to do with, commercialization forces. He talked about so many of those in the conventional, the traditional media today, having to grapple with the issue of sustaining themselves, and which brings us to the question of remuneration for media practitioners.
Okay, before we look at the issue of remuneration, let me lend my voice to what my brother Martins Ola just said. In 2012, I was one of 10 editors sponsored by Nigerian Turkish International Colleges Foundation on a trip to Istanbul in Turkey. There, we had a meeting with the Journalists and Writers Foundation, equivalents of our Nigerian Guild of Editors. The president told us he has observed that in Nigeria, we've been giving prominence to activities of terrorists on the front pages of our newspapers, and that it was not ideal. Even though their government was antagonistic to some of their media institutions, they try as much as possible to bury such stories deep inside their newspapers, as opposed to what obtains here in Nigeria. So he cautioned us to stop that.
I remember on our return to Nigeria, I tried as much as possible, to, especially the instant attacks by Boko Haram, to be burying it deep inside. But I lost quite a lot, in the course of doing that, because my publisher kept querying why I had to do it. You understand? Because of this issue of commercialization.
Right.
You understand? Because by the time you bury such stories deep inside and other papers bring them to the fore, you end up, losing readership. So, by and large, I think we need to do a lot more, in protecting our national interest.
All right. But we'll return to that, but we have a caller on the line from Lagos also. Bashir calling in from Lagos. Hello, Bashir. Hello.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Bashir Andy.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to commend you for this very wonderful program, and then
Earlier.
the prof said that the institution itself is I quite agree with what the professor has said. Honestly speaking, if I didn't been all the practitioners, the journalists in Nigeria, adhere to the real media so affected, business problem around. But unfortunately, today, everybody claims to be a journalist. We come back into the profession are liberal. Online newspapers are all brown. I don't consider, online postings and other things as news reportorial again. Because whosoever is into journalism profession must adhere strictly to the media law and ethics. Then the issue of brown envelope, which Dr. has taken initially, it is something that has become like an epidemic in Nigeria. And honestly speaking, it is high time we have a good regulatory body to checkmate all the menace going on in this journalism profession, the better for us. Somebody cannot come out without journalism background, then unfortunately you write the rubbish against Mr. President, against the minister, against all. The institution is sick. It is high time we address this issue.
All right.
Everybody wants to be a journalist.
Okay.
It is not a cheap profession, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Bashir. All right, Bashir, thank you. But
Cyril, you raised the issue of credibility.
Yes, we're bringing that. We'll still come to we'll come to that. But you see, as we go ahead, certain things are coming to light, like his last comments here, and it's the same thing I still want to put across to you, talking about commercialization and what isn't. Take, for instance, the issue of terrorism and these attacks, and the attempt to say, look, at what point do you just report what is of interest to the generality of the people? At what point do you begin to say this is of interest? And at what point do you begin to worry about, glamorizing terrorism? Some people have said that too, that you begin to give prominence to what the terrorists, they've killed 600 people last night. Oh, they massacred all the security forces. At what point?
Cyril, and they thrive in publicity.
Yes.
Terrorists thrive in publicity.
Yes. Cyril, it is often said conflict is the bread and butter of journalism. And you know it. Whenever there is conflict, the news people will always follow it. It's natural. People will want to know. People will be curious. And now with the social media, once you decide to bury the truth, then the social media will take it up. And there will be what we call cognitive dissonance and cognitive consonance. Now, the point is, in news dissemination, there are things people expect. Number one, is the information truthful? And by the way, what is even information? Information simply means uncertainty reduction. Are you reducing the level of uncertainty that exists on my mind on that particular subject, or are you adding on to it? When daily you are saying he said, he described, he lamented, he explained, he emphasized, what are you also doing as a professional in your own investigative journalism activity? You are always saying he said. He could say the wrong thing, he could say what is not truthful, but you are simply saying he said. What is the place of investigative journalism? And that is where the agenda setting aspect also comes in. Secondly, the issue of competence. What is the competence level of the individual disseminating the information, of the organization even doing the function? Where the aspect of competence is low, then why will I waste my time sitting down to listen to poorly delivered English, to poorly scripted news stories, to poorly investigative news stories, to always hear about he said, he said? I become tired and immunize myself against all the incoming information. Then the third aspect is the issue of relevance. Are you giving me what is relevant to my life? Or you are always telling me about Abuja when I'm in some other village? A large part of the northeastern state or the northeast part of Nigeria is not covered by any Nigerian radio signal. I challenge anybody to go and tell me it's not correct. They are not covered by any Nigerian radio signals. And there are pockets of areas that don't have access to any Nigerian radio signal, not to even talk of TV. They have to rely on international broadcasting organizations like BBC and others, and now the social media. So they are just on their own. Why can't we even provide the information? In the past, radio stations like Kaduna, when they had serious SW transmitters, were doing that. But today, they're on their own. Now, another issue is, apart from this issue of relevance, my problem in my village is water. You are telling me about Abuja. What is my business with Abuja when I'm in some village? You don't reflect my life in what you do. So, and then the last one is the issue of dynamism. Now the world has moved, technology has advanced, people have trained themselves, they have become experts, yet we are not willing to invest in the capacity of the institution as well as those who work in it. So what happens? The social media comes in as to fill in the gap.
Okay, let's quickly take this call from Ogun. Oluwaseun calling in from Ogun State. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry. We seem to have lost that call from Oluwaseun. All right, not to worry. We'd like to encourage you to call back. Might just be lucky next time around to get through to the studio. But at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll consider other aspects of what's going on. We will, of course, return to the issue of remuneration and credibility. Stay with us.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, so plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We begin this segment by taking our cameras out to the streets to talk to the citizens. Let's hear what they have to say about hate speeches and false news.
When you love yourself, relate it to your neighbor. We see hate speech cannot be able to come out.
Use the national orientation to, to mobilize people or go to the grassroots or talk to people, enlighten people about how hate speeches can break us apart, a nation apart.
Until we remove the so-called federal character in our constitution, we continue to have problem of hate speech. That's number one. Number two, until we remove the issue of indigenship, wherever you live should be a place in Nigeria, so that you'll be free wherever you are.
Because if some people are doing things that are not right, and you turn your eyes, definitely either that thing will continue or other people will also stand out and emulate them. So to curtail these type of things is that the federal government or whoever is in position of authority should make sure that there's justice for all. Anybody that trespass or that tramp on rule of law should be dealt with accordingly.
I think people should generally stay away from hate speeches in general, like sometimes someone might just say something or someone might do something and then one person just comes from nowhere, oh, this is how Igbo people behave, this is how Yoruba people behave, or this is how Hausa people behave. And next thing you know, people stop talking about the main issue and start being nasty to each other and saying hurtful things.
We should be mindful of what we write on social media. It's really tearing us apart. It's not bringing unity. We should talk of unity. Hate speech does not bring unity. Rather, it brings us, we look at ourselves as enemies.
The citizens are in their views there. There are some aspects which will return to as we go on with this program. But I did say we'll turn back to the issue of welfare remuneration for those even in the traditional media. And it's a known fact today that many media institutions are months and sometimes, I dare say, years behind in remunerating their staff.
Yeah, that's very true. Right now in the traditional media, only about 10% pay salary. About 90% does not.
So what do the practitioners in those institutions do for a living?
Well, the truth can at times be bitter, but then, that's where, in many cases, the brown envelope comes in.
Right.
You understand? As bitter as it sounds. That's why.
Okay, so on that, what would as a teacher, what would you teach about objectivity and then credibility?
Okay, before we go to that point, now globally there is a new trend from the UNESCO platform and all over the world on safety of journalists. And you cannot talk about safety. We are not just talking about physical safety. We are talking of economic safety. And our journalists in Nigeria clearly lack economic safety. And this forms part of what I earlier mentioned about our lawlessness in this country. You have an individual establishing a media organization, and we have labor laws. He will employ people. I feel bad when I graduate students who are employed by some of these people who pretend that they are proprietors of newspapers or radio or TV houses, but really they are rascals. Because if I work for you and you don't pay me, I'm sorry to use that word, what's the difference? You employ me for 3-4 months. I just can't imagine me working, teaching in the university for 3-4 months without my salary. I just can't imagine. It's not my problem. It's the headache of my vice chancellor to look for money to pay me. He has employed me. He's the representative of council. So it's the business of the general manager, whoever he is, or the editor, to pay. And it's the responsibility of the reporter, so long as he's performing, also to look for money. But where he fails, we have labor laws. And how many times have we tested such things in court? We need to go to court so that if you don't have the resources, you don't start the media, because there will be no point.
You need the resources to go to court.
That's why we have the NUJ. That's why we have the NUJ, the Guild of Editors, and all these bodies that are supposed to be protecting in court the interests of their members. But when you have an association that always follows governors to look for money to hold their own conferences, you have associations that are always looking for assistance from one minister or the other, then here they will lack the moral credibility or the moral right to now challenge those people in power, because they go to them to collect money, to hold even conferences, and then they are supposed to be paying their dues. So anybody who is not paying his salaries, why do we have the union for? Why are these laws? Why do we have the industrial court? Why do we have the NLC? It's their own business to protect the interests of workers. So this one, there are multiple dimensions. It's part of the lawlessness I told you about in this country.
Right.
That is an issue that will be continuously fought. You can't expect your men to go out and do a good job when you have not given them anything to feed on. They have families. You need to see some, in terms of transportation, it is a Herculean task. It is awful. I'm talking of just transportation. And they are expected to get to their business, place of work early enough to carry out whatever it is. And doing that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 months, 15 months, and how do you expect the individual to live? If he ends up being a part-time armed robber and part-time editor or journalist or whatever it is, would you blame him seriously? And that in itself is an area that must be looked into. I took up this even after I had left service with one of the broadcast houses. And it was a conference, you know, with the NUJ and the media houses. And I said, NUJ, you are a professional body as well as a labor union. I expect that you would take up this issue of your colleagues who are living in abject hunger and poverty and total deprivation, than just leaving them and looking at whatever it is or looking the other way. Lo and behold, the answer I got later in private was that whenever the authorities knew that they were coming there, you know, they would chip in 1 or 2 things, you know, dole out 1 or 2 things to these men, and whenever they go in there, everybody will tell you, oh, everything is working very well. We're okay. We're not sure we quite need a union. That place has not been unionized up till today. And it's only when there is a union that you have a body that talks on your behalf. If they are not there and you handle each individual his own way, well, nobody is ready to take a risk of losing his job, even though there's no money coming in.
Martins, okay, let's just go quickly to Martins in Lagos. And Martins, I just say to you, is it any surprise then that you have what's been referred to as bread and butter journalism?
You know, it was late Chief MKO Abiola, who noted this long ago about how integrity can be massively overrated in journalism. He said, you know, if you do not pay your workers who are journalists, somebody else on the beat will pay them. And that is exactly what happens now to the integrity of the news. You put people in a sensitive place, on a sensitive beat like the National Assembly. You do not pay them. It means that those legislators pay them to write what they want to write. How do you, I think Professor Pate was the one talking about impunity, lawlessness. You know that it is not possible in our South Africa here, even in Kenya, not to pay your workers, that the labor laws, the liquidators will come. They will arrest the chief executive, the owners of that kind of organization. These are in our labor laws, even in Kama, and so many of our laws. But you discover that people who are supposed to arrest need the media because they want to do some form of propaganda. They want to distort the news, and they need those people to do the job for them. So that is a problem of lawlessness. There's a problem of inability to enforce the laws. Who will enforce the laws? Okay, the people too, we're talking about the union member. The union members are managers in various organs. Can the managers who are union members confront their employers? The answer is blowing in the wind. So I think it's a very serious matter because independence we are talking about can only come from financial independence. If you do not have financial independence, you do not have economic power, you can't confront authorities, you can't cover corruption. How do you cover corruption? Corruption is a hydra-headed monster. And for you to be able to cover, you need financial independence from your own organization, but you are going to cover corruption, maybe press secretaries of the organization you are going to investigate, put you in a hotel. What manner of investigation is that, my brother? So I think that it's a problem here. We need to tell the authorities in Nigeria to enforce the laws, to ensure that people do not establish media organizations where they will not pay people, because people you do not pay cannot talk about integrity. You will see, this is why I said integrity has been massively overrated in this connection.
State governments that do not pay salaries.
But even governments too.
Even governments too don't pay salaries.
Okay, let's get, we have a caller from Lagos, Friday calling in from Lagos. Hello, Friday.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Yes, I think with your discussion, he who pays the cancer.
Okay.
He pays the bill.
All right.
He pays the bill. And Professor is a lecturer, he's a teacher, so he's a politician as well.
You know.
As I said, Mr. Matthews, I think they are correct. Yes, they are very correct, because what is happening in journalism in reporting today is not okay. It's not, yes, because of the brown envelope they receive, and because of the poor remuneration, and because they don't pay them on time as they are supposed to do. So what will they do? What will they do? They will collect money from outsiders, and outsiders will pay them. They will not publish what they are supposed to do. There are some papers that will publish something. The only headline, after the headline, before you finish the chapter, you find out that there's nothing again to end up with. What will you say? They would not just nothing, but just to sell the paper so that the company or the establishment or their companies or establishment will be satisfied. They need their salary now, and they have to work for the companies.
All right. And Cyril,
newspaper companies are just there for nothing. They are just to make money.
Okay.
So they only depend on headlines and nothing more.
Okay.
Not investigative journalism.
All right, thank you very much, Friday.
Right. It's not that they don't even pay. Even in cases where they pay, the salary is wretchedly and miserably low.
All right. Exactly. Anyhow, we talk about people rising up to the challenge of nationalism, trying to forge unity, and you have on the one hand the traditional media ill-prepared, not well-paid, not motivated. You have a social media, with advancements, in technology, people are able to send all kinds of things. And then you have a group of people who engage in hate speeches, stereotyping. One of the things going around recent is, I understand, a song that is inciting one section of the country against the other. And this has been widely circulated by individuals and so many people. So what is this thing in us that when you see something that you know isn't proper, why do you rebroadcast? Why don't you just delete?
It's really it's a vicious cycle. But let me say something before I make my comments on that. Government also needs to come in and help publishers of especially newspapers. You understand? In other countries, they give them waivers. For example, in importing newsprints, newsprint goes for about 400,000 per ton. 2 years ago, it was 150,000. If government can give the newspaper industry waivers, I believe it will add to their credibility. It will reduce the cost of their operations. So this is one role I expect the government to play. In many other countries, they do so. You understand? And it doesn't have any effect on their credibility or the way they report government.
Okay, now the responsibility of the individual, the corporate body, where is that these days?
Show of hate speech? Yes. Okay, first of all, let's understand what hate speech means. Hate speech is an insult, an abuse, or an expression of ill feelings towards an individual. One, to express the hatred that you have for that individual. Two, to make that individual hate himself. And three, to mobilize hatred from other people towards a particular individual. And we see a lot of it in Nigeria today. And we have is a category of what we call offensive speech.
Right.
But the most dangerous aspect of it is what we call also dangerous speech, where you now provoked public sentiments that could lead to violence against a particular group. And why do we express hate speech? Hate speech could be expressed either on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion, because you target a group, on the basis of religion, on the basis of disability of an individual, on the basis of his political leaning, you express that kind of hatred. And we see a lot of it in Nigeria today. And why do we do that? A number of reasons. And it could lead to, some people say, war. But, well, you need to know that war is not something that is, usually you don't have wars from deliberately planned program behaviors.
What about reprisal
It could be
attacks?
accidental. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Accidental. It could lead to accidental actions that could now result in big wars.
For instance, someone takes a smartphone, gets some footage from somewhere outside this country and circulates it and says, this is what happened yesterday in Ibadan.
Caused by
so killing so and so group, and circulated in the other side.
Let me give you a very simple example.
Right.
Now, often you read in our newspaper say Fulani herdsmen, Fulani armed robbers. An armed robber is an armed robber, Cyril. A criminal is a criminal. Anybody who takes up arms against Nigeria is a criminal, whether he's Fulani, whether he's this, whether he's that. But deliberately, people will now ethnicize every action. You have never seen where they have said Hausa permanent secretary stole money or Igbo permanent secretary stole money. They don't put that. But when it comes to certain ethnic groups, you have certain people mobilizing public sentiments against them and generalizing. Then at the end of the day, such a group is hated. And we have a lot of it.
Let's take this call from Sokoto, Adamu, and then we'll come back to that. Hello, Adamu, go ahead.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
I think our problem here with journalism is exactly what is happening in society today. There are two reasons which I think I have a reservation for the journalism in Nigeria, or probably in our society today. One, morality in our society, and two, we have no sanction and reward system in journalism. As the other deputy president said,
the president of Editors Guild in Nigerian said. You know, we always put sentiment of economic benefit when it comes against our national unity. And once you have that in our mind, of course, you always have problem in the society, and of course, it will translate to non-development of our society. And when it comes to morality, still, you know, there's no way you want to work in a journalist, in a media house, and you have not been paid salary for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Come on, what do you expect? You know, you need to feel this. The staff needs to feel this family. You need to pay some other things. But when you don't pay them salary, of course, the so-called whatever hate speeches who have the access to it will pay off and they get whatever they want to get. You know, but if there's sanction and reward system in journalism, I think our journalism will be better. Because look at it. For instance, now in America, sometimes we had a case of a terrorist attack in America. A simple, just one information that was passed to media houses. Americans stopped giving out. Britain stopped giving out American media houses facts of what's really happened in Manchester bombing, because the media has exposed one of the evidence that shows that these are the people who did such a thing in Washington. But in the case of our own country, Nigeria, we, the media house, want to make a lot of money from all this. And as you make this money from all this nonsense that people are publishing, you cause a lot of crisis. Because somebody in Lagos that doesn't even know Sokoto, we want to say, okay, there's a lot of things happening in Sokoto. Has he gone to Sokoto before? He has never gone to Sokoto. And just like what the prof said, you school in Kanu, you everything in Kanu, your NY in Kanu, and you want to write a report about Ibadan. Well, you don't even know Ibadan. I'm from Borno State, where there's a crisis now. And I tell you, I've not gone to Maiduguri for the past 3 years. But I can see someone will sit in Lagos and write news about Maiduguri. I mean, distorting the formation of security and property and security of the country. It has not even gone a way out of Lagos. You know, so when you have sanction and reward system in our journalism, I tell you, all the hate speeches and the rest will not come in. And on top of it, when we correct the morality in our society, I think we'll be better off.
All right, thank you very much, Adamu. Well, Dr. Adaba, this is just where we are when people circulate things like this. Now, we can blame the traditional media, we can talk about the social media, but what about the individuals who engage in this? Why would people deliberately distort such information? I have seen people who have done. Let's take an example. Recall what happened at the start of Ebola. It started off like a joke, and somebody circulated something. And so people are asking, what is the mindset of so many citizens that even when things are sent to you that ordinarily are ridiculous, we still want to swallow those things hook, line, and sinker?
To start with, who are the authors of hate speech? It's not the journalist who is collecting news here and there. There are people who are deliberately mischievous. Yes. They have other agenda for either the society in which they are or the totality of the country. These are the people that should be watched. But very many times we go on to the media house that did it and whatever the journalists, but somebody authored it. Somebody made that production possible, and these are the ones the security agencies should be after. But unfortunately, one of the greatest problems we have in this country up to today is that word impunity. Most of these things, hinge on it. If you know you will do something, and you know very well nothing will come out of it, you are tempted to do it. And that's if I know that if I write this hate speech to a specific journalist, that I give him some money and said, make sure it is out, I know nothing is going to happen to me. That's why I'm tempted to do it. But let the law enforcement agents, treat these issues one after the other. give 3, 5 cases where the authors of these or the purveyors of these are handled the right way, the legal way. Believe me, we'll calm down. We'll pull down on those things. But generally, the individuals who are doing it know nothing will happen to them. The people who are supposed to take action hardly ever do anything. I'm sorry, this is not even about his speech. I've been feeling very, very uncomfortable. With the EFCC, for example, how many cases have they taken to court and they have lost? Which ones have they won? Who has been sent to prison because of these issues of corruption that we'll be talking about? We've not been able to get anything. So others are tempted to sit tight on what they have. So is it also with hate speech. You know nothing will happen, so you are tempted to do it over and over again. On to a point that very many times some of us don't even know what is hate speech. We don't even know what hurts. We feel it is a norm. There's nothing serious about it. When you're rubbishing individuals, for the public, you're drawing down their ego and their personality, and you think it's nothing wrong. But there's a lot wrong. And these are things that cause destabilization in the society. Because if we do not check them, we're heading for chaos. Right. The person who has been written about will naturally want to respond. And when he responds, maybe he comes out with a lot of smart language. And the other ones will want to blast back. And it continues on and on. Before you know, it conflagrates into not just
dangerous speech.
Yes, not just small groups, but societies and the entire country. The issue, I'm sorry, sir, the issue of Biafra and Arewa youths, is there a basis, is there a need for it? But see what we have gotten, see what utterances even some supposedly responsible elders have been saying, as if nothing else exists except them, and the country can go to hell. I think it must be checked.
Let's just quickly take this call from Stephen from Jos. Hello, Stephen. Are you still on?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. I want to compliment Cyril on this program. And my contribution, I just want to, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really want us to get on this point. Is there any law in Nigeria that talks about hate speech, or is it constitutional? If it is constitutional that hate speech is not supposed to be made, then I think freedom of speech, I don't know if that constitution stated that there are speeches you don't make. I want to note, during this Borno crisis,
all right,
this attack in Borno, recently there is an attack.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, we lost that call from Stephen. But in a moment or two, Professor Pate will try and answer that question about freedom.
But you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot talk about.
No, you'll talk. You look at the aspects of freedom.
But I can tell you that in APCON, one of their regulations, I think it's Section 4 or so, is clearly on aspects of hate speech. And you know, it is still evolving. It's a very fluid concept that you may not say so. But there are laws of defamation, libel, and all of that. Good. Now, if you want to understand this concept of hate speech, it is structural in our system. If you look at how our political parties were constituted in the 50s, in the 40s, they were sort of regional. And that still followed us up to now. And people still use their own ethnic and whatever to point. Their religion. Okay. Unfortunately, in our religious groupings, we still distribute a lot of hate speeches within that concept. And people who are growing up tend to follow that. Then our own social ways of relating. There are a lot of stereotypes that we distribute and push on people. And again, because of the lawlessness that we have talked about, people are not being tried. Look at what has been happening. This Biafranization, devolution of power, restructuring, true federalism, resource control. Sometimes people take their frustrations and promote them or ethnicize them or religionize them. If, for example, a particular section of the country did not vote for a particular candidate, and this candidate has got the power, he decided perhaps not to put them so central in his administration, they are now out of frustration talking of even completely cutting out of the country. And then other people also are seeing that. And nobody is being punished. You have governors, you have senior politicians, people that were once military top heads in this country, people that were at the highest level of offices or second to highest level of offices. They sometimes open their mouths and say things which they are clear expressions of poverty of knowledge of Nigerian system, or they are clear exemplification of what you could call hate speech or dangerous speeches. And nobody is talking.
All right. Yes, you were going to come in just before we took that call.
Yeah, even though there were manifestations of hate speech in the First Republic,
yes,
the fact remains it has become more pronounced only in our contemporary history. About 72% of our population was born after 1982. You understand? So they hardly have much sense of history. That must have explained why, for example, they were born up 12 years after the Nigerian Civil War.
Right.
You hear people singing drums of war, beating drums of war, I mean, because they don't know what war means. You understand? A large number of them were born, like I said, 12 years after the Nigerian Civil War. That is at the minimum, 72% of our population.
All right. Let's return to Lagos now as we begin to wind down. Martins, you've heard how the contributions have gone around this part. And let me come to you with this. Publish and be damned.
Definitely, you can't publish and be damned. Definitely, the sense of responsibility we are talking about. But in this context, I think we need to appeal to our political leaders, as some of our elders there have said. Political management is a model now, and the way is we have a very delicate federation. Our diversity is complex, and in managing this, in publishing and broadcasting within this context, you know that nation building is actually not for the faint-hearted. Nation building that we're talking about now, that it appears that we do not yet have a nation. We just have what one leader called geographical expression, and that is what we are still discussing, that, oh, this one is a Muslim, this one is a Christian, this one is Yoruba, this one is this one is that, and minorities will be crying within the same context. And I think this is what you also see in the media. You see so many, you see different people have set up media organizations, newspapers, radio stations, television stations, even if they don't pay people. And you see, you cannot find Nigeria, even in reporting language. You see the government of Muhammadu Buhari, the government of Fayose, the government of Wakere Budolu, the government of this, the government of Kwakwanso, the government of Ganduje, the government of this. You don't hear Kano state government, you don't hear the federal government has done this. When they approve something at executive councils of different states or even of the federal government, it will be attributed to the leaders. And this is terrible. So nation building is still a huge challenge here. And you find it in our media language, in reporting language. You find this one in our attitude. You see that this is something that we need to work on. Somebody was talking about national orientation. I think some of the people that were interviewed were talking about national orientation. And I think it is not for a trite reason that political parties are even mentioned in the Constitution, that it is the responsibility of our political parties, because we are talking about the news that feeds democracy. It is within this context you find hate speeches here and there. And I want us to anchor this on what some of our elders have said there about law enforcement. Let people who misbehave, let people who want to start up rebellion, people who convey all these hate speeches, who publish them, let them be punished. Let people go to court to seek redress. Let law enforcement agents do their job. Let people begin to suffer consequences of their action. Let people begin to account and be responsible for action and inaction. If we begin to see this as we see in other democracies, people will be regulated, people will behave well. But as we have now, there's so much lawlessness, there's so much big manism. Somebody can tell you that, do you know who I am? If you ask them to comply, you see in this place now, you see how people can, even simple traffic rule, traffic lights, people don't want to obey because we have a culture of impunity. And this is terrible for this country. Indiscipline, a culture of indiscipline, a culture of impunity. We need to come down to basics for our political leaders to say that, look, this is the way we behave. The way they themselves conduct themselves, the way they behave to do what everybody is doing is an instinctive reaction. The way they display wealth, the way they display wealth that they don't make, they are wealthy without work. All our political leaders, the kind of lifestyle that they display also encourages indiscipline. So Shakespeare says to us, and we take away this, that any mercy that encourages, that forgives a murderer, encourages murder. So we should not encourage murder by having mercy on a murderer. Let the murderer go to jail. Let us enforce our laws. Let our political leaders behave well. Let them be role models for us to see and behave and say, look, because at the moment we have a crisis of character in our governance system, a crisis of character. And I think this is a huge challenge that we need to address in the context of nation building.
Thanks. Well, Dr. Adaba, let me come to you here and say, as an elder, would it be right to say that the elders have not led properly? Because the worry now is that, like Suleiman said, we have a whole crop of young people who do not have the benefit of the knowledge of history. And so they're sucked into what they see happening now. So what hope for the future?
Well, they are seeing what is happening. If they don't want to take their cue from what the elders have done, they have an alternative. But the alternative is certainly not violence. It's not, because it doesn't help anything at all. Yes, the younger ones took they copied all the ideas of even corruption and whatever it is from us, the elders, which is very sad. But my own time, I'm talking of the, the 60s and when we got independence. Corruption was nowhere near as rife as this. Not even during Shagari's time, 79 to 84 or 83, December. Even then, people were complaining of corruption during Shagari's time. Yet there was his is miles away from what we see today. I don't know if it is the elders that have continued to give that example everywhere around. But let me say, if we talk of governance or government, yes, it's the elders that have been doing the government, so the fault is theirs too. We have met many areas where we would have helped in building up these children, these youngsters, that we failed to. Religious knowledge, for example, instills fear of God into these young ones, and brings them up as worthy ambassadors of this nation. That has been de-emphasized. History has been de-emphasized in the school curriculum, but I understand it's coming back now. Literature, these are things that give the young ones a sense of belonging, and looking now onto mentors. But those are not there. It's our fault, because we're the ones who twisted it here and there, and everything gets warped. So in the educational system, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Even teachers, We hear of advanced teachers, federal colleges of education, but you don't jump onto colleges of education unless you have the lower grades of teachers, who are the grassroots teachers that bring up these children. If they don't know, what will they give the children? And these are the people we're talking about, and today we say, oh, the children have been very badly brought up in terms of education. They cannot read this. The teachers themselves, how much of it do they know? Why don't we go back to the good old system of a teacher's grade 2 college, where we now teach them to teach the younger ones? And then it goes on and on that way. There are so many other areas. So if governance is handled by the elders, and we've come out with these results, I own up that we are at fault.
So by the time we send them to Professor Patti, what is he churning out?
Well, by the time your child comes to meet me in the university, he has already been damaged or managed. By the time he comes, I will not start teaching him what is verb, what is noun. And now, Cyril, let me just tell you one thing. Parents connive with their children to cheat in examination.
Yes.
We have children that have never known what is ethical and what is truthful. From nursery to secondary school to JAM, they cheat. We have just handled a case in my place. In fact, we have not even finished sorting the case. Anyway, perhaps let me not open it up here, and because it will be indicted to some organizations. People go to either the West African Examination Council, NECO, JAM, to cheat from the source. We have discovered that with some staff, not with the organizations, of course, with some staff within the system. So children grow up not even believing that there is something called ethical way of behaving or thinking. Now, what of the elders? People cheat in elections. You have people that have cheated, are in court, they are in parliament. And then what we see in the courts, the more you try to understand, the less you understand. They go and get some kind of injunctions permanently, and then they play with some legal language. At the end of the day, people whom you believe are supposed to be in jail are those who are ruling. They are those who are making laws. They are those who are now managing the rest of us. Of course, what will be the role model? Our children who are growing up, who have never known what is truthful, who have never known history, who have never known sociology, or even knowing the country, are looking up to these people who open their mouths and say what they feel like and sleep free and drive very huge, big cars that are proceeds of illegal wealth.
And hire the young
and nobody are thugs, and nobody can challenge them. So at the end of the day, what do we have? And the media itself is mostly constituency media. That's another discussion for another day.
Well, Suleiman is here.
So when you look at the entire system, we have serious problems.
So bodies like the Nigerian Guild of Editors, what role?
Well, at the level of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, we try as much as possible to sieve the grain from the chaff. We don't register members just anyhow. We have made the process more and more strenuous. You have to really qualify to be a member. You understand? And second,
but again, you also have the factor there of ownership, which sometimes overrides even the stringent conditions which the practitioners themselves do.
Okay, you are talking about ownership of the mediums?
Yes, exactly, yes.
No. Ownership of the mediums does not compile on you qualification as...
I know. What I'm saying is you have your stringent conditions for practitioners, but there's also the factor of ownership, which sometimes can also...
No, we hardly allow ownership, honestly, to play a role in who becomes member of the guild, for example. We have a regulation that says you have to be an editor consistently for 5 years. Yes. You understand? Whether you are practicing in the traditional or new media, you have to consistently practice, you know.
Here we're talking about the ethics now, upholding the ethics and, you know, being sure that we're setting standards, maintaining the standards.
Yeah, as much as possible, even though Nigerian media is largely self-regulated, but as much as possible, the Nigerian Guild of Editors tries to ensure, you know, encourages members of the public to send complaints to it. We are not really regulators, you understand? Like I said, we self-regulate, which in itself is dangerous. Of course, this is my own view, you understand? Self-regulation can be very dangerous, you know. But as much as possible, we encourage members of the public to send petitions to us, and we always try to deal with those petitions.
And Cyril, on the side of the people, we should also encourage media literacy. How can people expose themselves to the media? How can they critically consume products of the media? Like what UNESCO is saying, these are critical times, so we need critical minds for critical times.
So, but how do you have the critical minds if they have not been developed all along?
We are developing them, and then it is also our business now to develop the public so that they can consume media products critically. And that is also a challenge for the media. So media literacy is also very, very important.
You know, sometimes you see, I worry because there are so many concepts that have been knocked off now.
Yes.
I mean, you can't say seeing is believing anymore.
But you see, Cyril, it's not everything that is actually, all these evils are not necessarily being perpetrated by real media practitioners. Only yesterday I received a petition from, I wouldn't want to mention the name of the organization, head of one of the federal institutions, parastatals, complaining about a so-called journalist going to him and asking for 5 million naira. You understand? And he claimed to be working for a very reputable media agency. I went to see the editor-in-chief of that media agency yesterday, and the person told me they don't have anyone with such a name in their employ. You understand? So honestly speaking, we have criminals masquerading as editors, I mean as journalists.
And there are quacks.
Quacks, of course.
Right, so all that is. So many things here are involved.
Exactly.
Well, we're gradually winding down, and we just have a few minutes. And we'll just hop over to Lagos and say, Martins, it's been interesting, having you on this program. Just a few final words as we say our goodbyes. Martins Oloja.
To say that, the ideal of social media, where most of this information will just pass around, is an idea whose time has come, and people should be educated enough to face the challenges posed by the social media. It is citizen journalism. As the professor said there, it is simple, it is cheaper, it is specific, and it is so cool to the people. Is so good that people do it, no training, and there is no force on earth that can repel them, because it's an idea whose time has come. We appeal to organizations and even government institutions to invest in the traditional media, even in the social media, in a way that they themselves can tell their story. This is the age of storytelling in journalism. Tell their stories in a way. When you have institutions like even the military that will give you fake news, it becomes an issue. So
thank you very much, Martins. And at this point, we'll just quickly say our goodbyes to you. Martins Oloja, senior editor of The Guardian, is a member of the editorial board of The Guardian, is also a columnist. Thank you, Martins. Joined us from Lagos Network Center. Thank you very much. And back here in Abuja, I'd also like to say thank you to Suleiman Ubagaya, Deputy President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. It's been interesting having you here. And Professor Pate, Dean, Faculty of Media, that's Bayero University, Kano. Thank you for giving us your perspective on the issues tonight. And
you're welcome.
Caution is the word, really, you say?
Of course, we shouldn't be sermonizing all the time. We should face the reality and say the truth.
And take everything with a pinch of salt, really.
Of course, yes.
All right. And a big thank you to Dr. Tom Adaba, former Director General of the NBC, the National Broadcasting Commission. I have to say this, it's not everyone who's so lucky to have had the opportunity and the rare privilege to sit in a class with someone who has taught you, and much later in life to have the opportunity to also pick their brains on the program, and that's talking about Tom Adaba, who many years ago taught some of us how to do this job, and
you're doing well.
Well, thank you.
You are doing well.
Thank you very much, sir.
Most welcome.
Thank you. And I also say thank you to you too for being part of this program. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.